welcome everybody. My name's Julia Cirillo and I'm the Water Watch and the Rapid Response to Litter Coordinator at Merri Creek Management Committee. I'm also the moderator and introducer for today's workshop. Helping out with chat, as you just heard, is my colleague at MCMC, Dr. Angela Foley. So she'll be helping out with chat. I'd like to introduce our presenters for today, fellow presenters. We've got Anne McGregor and Freya McGregor. Anne is the Vice President of the Friends of Merri Creek, President of the Merri Creek Management Committee of Management, and founder, along with her husband Bruce, of the Nature Stewards Program. Freya is the Outreach Coordinator for Ray Brown's Talkin Birds, a US radio show and podcast about birds, birding and conservation. So pretty excited to have a US connection today, and so Freya's joining us from over in the United States. The Talkin Birds website has lots of ideas and advice about plirding at talkinbirds.com/plirding, which I'm certainly happy to put into the chat. Freya is an occupational therapist based in the United States, and she's coordinator of Birdability, a non-for-profit organisation that works to ensure the birding community and the outdoors are welcome and accessible for everybody, particularly people with a disability and other health concerns. Just a little bit about Friends of Merri Creek for those that don't know. The Friends of Merri Creek has been operating for over 30 years and has over 550 active members, which is pretty amazing. The Friends of Merri Creek activities include planting, citizen science activities, flora and fauna surveys, advocacy and education about the Merri Creek catchment, as well as a large litter cleanup presence on the riparian zone. Friends of Merri Creek work in close partnership with Merri Creek Management Committee. Merri Creek Management Committee is a not-for-profit environmental coordination and management agency formed way back in 1989 to achieve a shared vision for the waterway corridors of the Merri Creek catchment. Its members include all municipalities of the catchment, the cities of Darebin, Hume, Moreland, Whittlesea and Yarra. And thank you to the City of Yarra who's supporting today's event. Of course, and Mitchell, plus the Friends of Merri Creek and the Wallen Environment Group. And representatives from these groups form the Committee of Management that guide MCMC's activities. And MCMC employs around 20 staff, including education, management and biodiversity management staff with extensive expertise. Before we get going, I just wanted to also do an acknowledgement to country. I'm today standing on the traditional owners, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I welcome all any elders that are in our audience today, and all countries from around Victoria and perhaps around the world. So I think we might get started, I think. So I think we're going to have Freya and Anne start about what actually is plirding and why do we plird?
Thanks so much, Julia. Hi, everyone. My name's Freya McGregor. As Julia said, I'm the outreach coordinator for a radio show and podcast about birds and conservation that's based in the US, but we do have listeners around the world. So, hey, if you need a 30-minute podcast that's kind of about a few different birds that you might never see along the Merri Creek, you should check us out. That's in my spare time. My full-time job is, as Julia mentioned, the coordinator of a brand new nonprofit that uses my skills as an occupational therapist and is all about enabling and empowering and making sure that the birding community and the outdoors is inclusive, safe, welcoming and accessible to people with disabilities and other health concerns. So there's the plug for Birdability. I also see someone in the audience here who I won't out, but was one of my former lecturers, which is really cool. So that was a very unexpected delight. There you go. Occupational therapy is amazing. If you don't know about it, you should. Anyway. Mum, do you want to introduce yourself while I share my screen?
Sure.
Oh, by the way, that's my mum.
Thank you, Freya, for that.
We're keeping this in the family. I love it.
I'm Anne McGregor, and as Julia has introduced me already, I could also add, as the slide says there now, I'm the coordinator of the Friends of Merri Creek Bird Watch or bird surveys, which are held at 10 sites along the Merri Creek and at Edwards Lake in Reservoir, 4 times a year. Unfortunately, the September surveys will be not public. Only people who live locally who can exercise on the survey route, that our leaders will be doing those surveys. But normally we do welcome everybody to join our surveys and help monitor birds and learn a little bit more about our local birds. So you can check the Friends of Merri Creek website for details on future surveys. So, Freya, you're going to start, but I'd also like to, right at the beginning, thank the photographers for the bird photos that we're using, the Merri Creek bird photos that we're using today. Peter Mollison and Adi Tudor, and Adi's in the audience, I notice. Hi, Adi. Beautiful photos. They've taken, almost all the photos we're using have been taken on or very near Merri Creek. So that's really great. Thank you to both of you. Back to you, Freya.
Plirding. Plirding is picking up litter while birding. We certainly didn't invent this idea at Talkin Birds. A lot of people do pick up litter while they're out birding, but we probably, Ray, the host and my boss, who's here tonight as well, probably invented the word. A lot of people find it kind of hilarious, but once you say it enough, it comes naturally. By the way, I should also mention, just because it's an interesting cultural link, that birding, because of, well, there's a whole lot to go into there, but when I say birding, I mean bird watching or bird listening or bird enjoying or any way that you might enjoy wild birds. It doesn't have to involve watching. So I'm a big proponent of using birding to be a little bit more inclusive of all the different ways that people can enjoy birds. So picking up litter while birding. We have a whole stack of ideas on the Talkin Birds website at talkinbirds.com/plirding for ways that you might go plirding as an individual, as part of a group, like during the Merri Creek Bird Survey, or if you're in the US at a bird club or an Audubon chapter bird outing. If you're attached to a nature centre, places like maybe Ceres or any outdoor place, how they might encourage people to go plirding. And even bird festivals. There's quite a lot of bird festivals in the US, and how they might go plirding too. So please check them out. We're only going to cover a couple of ideas tonight. So if none of these seem to fit with the way you go outside and enjoy birds, there might be another one. So please check it out and see if there's one that you can kind of slot into your regular birding and make it even better because it's plirding. So these graphics were made in the US. So the graphics all have a North American bird on them, but we have a corresponding Merri Creek bird next to it. So this is a greater sage-grouse in the G. They're kind of giant chooks, basically, with amazing displays. And there's a lady in the bird blind, or the bird hide, checking out this display dance. Up the top, there's a crunched up piece of litter and it says trash equals treasure. Having that approach to plirding can make it kind of fun and a bit more like a game rather than a chore, because who wants to pick up litter? But if it's a fun thing like a treasure hunt or like an Easter egg hunt, then that's so much more exciting, especially for kids. So changing your kind of mindset into this trash equals treasure idea is definitely one way to begin your plirding adventures. I should asterisk myself here. I've been living in the US for 5 years now, and there's a few American words that have crept into my vocabulary. So please excuse them.
I think that's great, Freya. I think we're all going to learn a little bit more vocabulary, so keep it going.
So, Mum, there's no greater sage-grouse on the Merri Creek, but what else might folks see when they're plirding on the creek?
Well, something much smaller we've put in here, a grey fantail, which is a cute little fellow, who very active and acrobatic, flips about the lower canopy, fanning its tail all the time, and trilling or chattering, quite vocal. You'll often hear them about before you see them. And if you're poking about looking for litter on the ground or in the vegetation along the creek, you might find a grey fantail, often part of a mixed flock. So you might hear them and they'll lead you to other birds.
If you're in the US or North America, grey fantails are a lot like gnatcatchers in that they're small and they move and they do that shimmy thing with their tail. And if you're in Australia, yeah, greater sage-grouse is like a really fantastic chook. Another way to go floating in a group, not right now, but in a group, is to have group cleanups, because many hands make light work. And it can feel really fun to do something like this with your friends. Certainly not right now, but focusing on waterways like the Merri Creek, rivers and lakes and the beach is a really important thing to do, because so much trash that ends up in the oceans started out on the streets or out in the world, and it went down the waterways through stormwater drains and through the creeks and rivers into the ocean. And ocean plastic is a really, really big problem for a lot of birds. These are American oyster catchers, which are very similar to Australian oyster catchers, and they for sure are not interested in having trash in their homes.
We don't have oyster catchers on the creek. They're seashore birds, but we occasionally have a powerful owl. Another O. You've probably worked out now that we're working through Go Plirding. So it's Australia's largest owl. Pretty impressive. They're at least 600 millimeters, 60 centimeters long. If you're a North American, they're a bit bigger than the great horned owl. Not very often seen along the Merri Creek, but a Deakin University study has tracked one that moves up and down the Yarra Valley, and this is probably her. She was roosting beside the Merri in North Fitzroy a year or two back, and pretty exciting. The preferred food is possum. They commonly roost along creeks, and if you want to learn more about powerful owls, there was a webinar in September last year, which is recorded and available on the Merri Creek Management Committee website.
If you're in North America, it's not the possum you're thinking. Australia has a lot of different kinds of possums, lots big ones, tiny little things. In North America, it's really an opossum that looks unfortunately like a rat, but they're really fantastic and you should love them because they eat lots of ticks, and ticks are bad news. Mum, what kind of possums do powerful owls eat that aren't opossums?
They're marsupials, so ringtail possums and brushtail possums. They do also apparently attack and eat birds, even a white cockatoo. And I can just imagine the noise if a powerful owl pounced on a white cockatoo that was snoozing away one night. Anyway.
Also, this is the look for sure. This powerful owl's glare is the look that everyone who drops litter intentionally should be getting from everyone around them. That level of like
disdain.
Yes, and menace almost. Anyhow, if you have limited time or limited capacity to carry any of the litter or the trash that you're picking up, or if you're like me and chronically forget to bring an old single-use shopping bag with you to collect your trash, on the way out, as I'm going out birding, I am looking and listening for birds, but on the way back you tend not to see as much or hear as much, or you've sort of already encountered those birds on that outing. And so I use because I'm right-handed and I want my right hand for my binoculars, I use my left hand to pick up trash. You can only carry so much in one hand though. You can carry quite a lot, but still you are somewhat limited. And so if you only have a limited carrying capacity, focusing on monofilament like this lady is doing, or fishing line, is really, really helpful. You'll get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of making a positive difference for birds. Monofilament is thin, it's clear, it's really strong. These all make it great for fishing line and terrible for birds. A lot of birds get tangled up in fishing line. A lot of sea animals, turtles and seals, a whole lot of stuff get all tangled up, and because it's so strong, they can't get out of it. Their beaks, their wings, their legs, it can cause them a lot of trouble, and it very often leads to death. So if you have one thing to focus on, taking a handful of monofilament out of the environment and disposing of it in an actual bin or trash can, depending on what country you're in, is really, really valuable and definitely helpful. Atlantic puffins, which are incredibly cute, definitely are at risk from monofilament. And so we want to definitely keep that out of their way if we can at all times.
So obviously we don't have Atlantic puffins in Australia, but we do have Pacific black ducks. These are quite common ducks. They're actually brown, not black, as you can see. Almost a black stripe through the eye, which is quite diagnostic. They're dabbling ducks, so they up in, put their heads down in the water and feed on the seeds of aquatic plants. They have a very bright green, iridescent green strip on the wing. You can see when they fly or flap their wings.
Sort of over here, right, Mum?
Yes, about there. Which can be purple at times, and that can be an indicator that they're actually a hybrid with a mallard, a northern hemisphere duck. Mallards have been introduced into Australia, and so there's quite a few hybrids. But this happy family of duck and ducklings was on the Jones Park wetland in East Brunswick, I think.
The Pacific black ducks look a little bit like a few duck species in North America where, in fact, mallards are native. But there are domestic mallards, and then there's a bunch of stuff that's hybridized with the native mallards here too as well. So it seems like ducks just enjoy life. Oh, hang on. Have you got?
We've got a bonus. Bonus P here. I couldn't just putting this one in. It's such a sinister fellow, the pied currawong. People are probably hearing them around. They're more common in the cooler months in Melbourne, although they do hang around all year nowadays because there's so much food. They look at the solid beak. That's good for eating all sorts of things, including, I'm afraid, nestlings of other species. And there's another currawong along the Merri. Both species are nesting at the moment, I'm told, along the creek in various places. The grey currawong, which is a bit greyer, not so dark, doesn't have white on the rump like the pied currawong, and has quite a different call. It's a clinking call instead of the currawong call. So that's
the eye colour, Mum. Is that diagnostic?
It doesn't help much.
Doesn't help. Oh, well.
Do you want to do a rendition of what it sounds like?
No, I'm no good at all at bird calls. Sorry, Julia.
Actually, you know what does have bird calls? There's an amazing app. This is a total tangent. There's an amazing app called the Merlin Bird ID app, and it's free to download. It's created by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which is in North America, but they have an Australian bird pack. And it's a really nifty tool. If you're out birding, it can help you identify a bird that you're not sure about. You put in a few key like observations that you've made. It tells you what ones to put in. It doesn't always get them completely right, but it can give you a bit of a ballpark. But it also has all the calls and the range maps and stuff for all the species, and you can just look up different species. So if you were not sure what kind of currawong was calling, turn your phone right down, because you don't want to be interfering with the birds that are around by calling something that isn't really there. But have a listen, and you can play that call and see if it was a pied currawong or a grey currawong. There you go. Random plug for Merlin Bird ID.
Yes, thanks, Freya. Yeah, so there's a question there about, could you repeat the name of the app? Merlin.
The Merlin Bird ID app.
MERLIN, Merlin. Yeah.
And I would also think the Birds Australia app, like the Birds in Backyards coming up, which I'll give a plug a bit later on, but I think they've also got the calls of the local birds too, don't they, Anne? Is that a good app for people to download in Melbourne?
I'm afraid I don't have the app. Certainly the Birds in Backyards website has calls, recordings of the calls in their bird finder pages. Yes.
Yeah, and I think Museum Australia and Museum Melbourne also have quite good bird apps here too.
Yay, bird apps.
Yeah, they're everywhere. It's amazing to think 5 years ago there wasn't really any, and now there's lots.
Yeah, and free and helpful. Always awesome. There's lots of different ways to go plirding. You don't have to do it while walking down a trail, because you don't have to go birding only walking down a trail. This lady is out in her kayak, removing some 6-pack rings from a lake. Now these birds are delightful birds. They're common loons. If you have ever been to North America and heard a common loon call, they make some incredible sounds, often at dusk or dawn on these wonderful lakes, and it's super eerie and amazing. And they're really beautiful birds. They're not related to ducks at all. They're big birds. Anyway, I'll stop on the fangirling of the common loons, but the plastic 6-pack rings are another really, really helpful thing to take out of the environment, especially if you have limited capacity to carry the litter that you're picking up while you're plirding. Similar to monofilament, and anything that can be a complete circle. Birds can get their heads and necks and beaks and their wings and their legs and feet tangled up in that circle and can't get themselves out. So again, that often leads to death, which is bad. So another handy thing, you might have heard of this before. If you ever are buying beer or anything that has these plastic 6-pack rings, just getting a pair of scissors and cutting through all of those circles before you responsibly dispose of the 6-pack ring can be really helpful, because of course you put your litter in a bin, but you never quite know if maybe it'll fly out of the garbage truck or get blown off the dump somewhere and end up in the ocean as complete 6-pack rings. So just scissor through it and it'll end up being this really weird looking long piece of plastic, but it'll definitely pose less of a threat if it does happen to get out into the environment.
So we don't have the wonderful loons in Australia, but we do have wonderful parrots and lorikeets, which are our owl bird here. Instead of the rainbow lorikeet, which I think nearly everyone's familiar with in northern Melbourne, I've put up the musk lorikeet, which is a bit smaller than the rainbow. They're very noisy. They're nectar feeders, very noisy flocks feeding in flowering eucalypts. Mostly green, and you can see the red forehead and a band on the side of the head through the eye, red band. They do have a shorter tail in flight than the rainbow lorikeets. So, and a different call, they shriek, very hectic call as they fly. So keep an eye out for musk lorikeets.
Instead of going Plirding by yourself, you can also go Plirding with a partner. When I was rehearsing this with Mum, I was stumbling around with Plirding with a buddy and suddenly realised you could go Plirding with a partner. Plirding with a partner is great because someone can carry the bag and someone can be picking up the trash. Using a single-use shopping bag that ideally you don't have many of because you all use fabric shopping bags, but there's probably a few lying around that can be very well recycled in this way, is an easy way to collect your trash. And having a long-handled litter pickup stick or long-handled trash grabbers is a great way to go Plirding, because one, you don't have to touch the litter yourself, which is excellent, especially during a pandemic. And the other is you don't have to bend down to pick it up. Take it from me, bending down to pick up litter a lot can kind of make you a bit sore. But if you have bad knees or a bad back or bad hips or anything, it can also be really difficult. So make your life a little easier. And you may be able to buy a long-handled trash grabber from like Bunnings, or if you're in North America, Home Depot and Lowe's, I believe, sell them. Or if you're in North America, if you have a local Keep America Beautiful affiliate, like Keep San Antonio Beautiful, for example, they'll often have them to loan out. But if you're along the Merri Creek,
I've got some. So I have offering a click and collect process at the moment. So I do actually have a litter kit that's got quite a number of pieces of equipment for groups, and obviously in the moment in Melbourne we're in lockdown, so we can only go Plirding with a buddy or a partner or your household. So I'm actually lending out gloves and pickup sticks and bags, which you can hold on to for the duration of lockdown and then return them to me. So it's just a matter of emailing me and telling me how many you want, how many bags, gloves and pickup sticks, or one or the other, and just coming to my place, which is in Brunswick West, so not too far away, and picking them up. So there's certainly that option as well. You don't need to buy them, but it's great to know that there are options of buying them as well.
By the way, if you were wondering about the woman in the background of that graphic, she has not got a pickup stick. That is a long cane or a white cane, which is a tool that a lot of folks who are blind or have low vision use to help them know where they are in space as they get around outside in the community. So she's birding by ear. That's why her hand is up near her ear. Indigo buntings, that's the male at the top that's bright blue. The female is a more yellowy kind of olive colour. They are amazing. If you need an excuse to visit North America at some future point in time, indigo buntings are incredible. They are all blue, and the most amazing blue when the sunlight hits them, because like there's actually no such thing as a blue bird, despite what your eyes tell you. That's actually a trick of the light, and the way the light hits the pigmentation in the feathers creates that blue that we see, which is why when a blue bird is in the shadows, it'll look kind of black, because it's all about the light. But indigo buntings are incredible if you ever get the chance to see one.
Well, along the Merri, our eye bird is the silver eye. A very small bird, very small, but quite vocal. You often hear them twittering or warbling, or the high-pitched seep noise. They seem to talk to each other all the time. They're often in small groups or small flocks. They eat fruit and nectar and insects, so they move through the canopy. They can come down quite low to the ground. This one's feeding on a local indigenous plant, ruby saltbush, probably near Brunswick Velodrome, I think. And even though they're very small, quite a number of them fly across Bass Strait from Tasmania for winter. Remarkable journey. And the Tasmanian birds tend to have chestnut brown flanks rather than a buff flank from most of the mainland birds. So keep an eye out for silver eyes. You can see them in your backyard too, especially if you have fruit trees.
About the size of a warbler if you're in North America. Little plump, plump warbler. These are roadrunners. Roadrunners are fantastic. By the way, they don't say meat. Artistic license is an amazing thing. They are, however, incredibly awesome. I haven't seen one pulling pranks on a coyote. They're actually pretty shy. When you kind of get to them, they want to be out of your way. But they do have purple on the head, not a giant plume. They have a little bit of purple in their eye makeup, which is really, really beautiful. But I promise you won't be disappointed when you do see a roadrunner in real life. They are fantastic, just nothing like the cartoon. Another thing that's really helpful to focus on when you're plirding is balloons. Balloons are bad news because what goes up must come down, and balloons pop, and then they look remarkably like jellyfish and other tasty delights in the ocean. However, they're not digestible, and there's a horrendous amount of seabirds and sea turtles that have been found. They've died, and when they've done an autopsy, they've found not just a couple of bits of balloons in their gastrointestinal tract, but like huge clumps, and that's sometimes what's caused the death. Their whole insides have been clogged up by eating what they didn't realize was not food. So there's a really great organization in the US called Balloons Blow, Don't Let Them Go. And if you have always used balloons to help celebrate birthday parties and things like that, have a look at their website, because they have some really cool ideas of more sustainable, planet-friendly alternatives to using balloons to help celebrate, because it's better not to be in the environment in the first place. These two are mylar balloons. They're particularly bad. They're the ones that are sort of like aluminium, like alfoil stuff that kind of crunkle. They're often in really interesting shapes, and they'll have things printed on the outside. They're really bad news as well. So if you ever see a balloon kind of drifting along that's half deflated, please grab that. It's not a good thing to be out, especially in the ocean. And while you're plirding, please share your adventures on social media using #Plirding, because at Talkin Birds, we really want to see what you're up to, and we want to help celebrate your awesome efforts at being amazing. And we hope that you sharing it on social media will also help your friends and your network know about what you're up to, and they might decide to go plirding too, which would only be a good thing for the planet. So pick up balloons, try to reduce or remove your balloon use if you can, and share plirding on social media.
Okay, so our local R-bird is a red wattlebird. I'm sure everyone's seen red wattlebirds flying around, quite big birds. They're the largest mainland honeyeater. Tasmania actually has a bigger wattlebird, the yellow wattlebird, but for a honeyeater, they're quite big, grey with white streaks, as you can see. Very raucous calls. They tend to the nomads flying around in flocks chasing nectar flows. I should also point out the red wattle. It's nothing to do with the wattle trees. It's a flap of skin just below the eye or the cheek there, which gets longer and darker as the birds get older. So the little wattlebird, by comparison, which you might also see in your gardens or perhaps along the creek, I tend to see the red wattlebird more often on the creek than the little wattlebird. It's a little bit smaller than the red and has no wattles and no yellow belly like the red wattlebird. But the little wattlebird does have a patch of rufous colour in the wings that you see when it's flying under the wing.
I just want to quickly mention about balloons in Victoria. Just on the 1st of July, actually this year, it's now illegal to release balloons. So you get a hefty fine. So hopefully those types of laws are, sweeping through different parts of the world, which will hopefully make a really big difference about the amount of balloons we see out in nature.
Yeah, and actually, thank you, Julia. The Hillsville Sanctuary has a lot of stuff on their website about balloons too. So that's another place to check out. I don't know if they I think they have a few alternatives, but the balloons blow, don't let them go. Folks have like pages of different ideas to use rather than balloons for events. Mum, so the little wattlebird is really not that little.
No, for a honey eater, it's quite big. It's just a little bit smaller than the red wattlebird.
If you're in North America, kind of like a small cuckoo, like a yellow-billed or black-billed cuckoo. Greater roadrunners are cuckoos, actually, so nothing like a greater roadrunner, but that kind of idea. Anyone can go Plirding, just like anyone can go birding. And through my work with Birdability, I'm a big advocate of that. This illustration, pretty sure it was inspired by the Birdability founder, Virginia Rose, who uses a manual wheelchair. And she looks a lot like that. And that's an American dipper, which are really fun birds. They run around on rocks in creeks and streams. Merri Creek, I bet, would be a great place for a dipper. They dip, they like squat, they do lots of squats, and they pick insects up out of the water and off rocks. Cold, like mountain streams. So they're pretty awesome. I haven't seen one yet. I'm really looking forward to finding a dipper sometime. But again, the lady in this graphic is using another pickup stick so she can reach those plastic bottles. Plastic is bad news. Plastic is always bad news because it doesn't decompose and animals eat it by mistake. Again, picking up plastic is a great way to use your Plirding for maximum benefit, and a pickup stick may help with that.
Dippers are great birds, I can vouch for that. But locally on the Merri Creek, we have dusky moorhens as a D-bird. They're not ducks, they're part of the rail and frakes family, and they constantly flick their tail up and down like most rails. They've got quite a loud sort of shriek call, which you can hear even before you see them. So you might see them swimming along the Merri Creek or walking through the grasses on the bank. They have long, thin toes. They don't have webbed toes like ducks, but they're good at walking on aquatic plants and through the grass. And it's very easy to identify them from their red frontal shield above between their eyes, which extends down onto the beak, and which has a yellow tip if they're an adult. But we've got a photo here of the immature just to confuse you. They don't have any of that colour on their bill at all. So if you see a very dull, dark grey, brown, bluish grey sort of duck-sized bird on the creek, it might be an immature dusky moorhen, probably hanging around with its parents. So the pairs of moorhens stay together all the time, and their offspring stay with them for quite a while.
If you're in North America, why yes, in fact, the dusky moorhen looks a lot like a purple or swamp gallinule because it is a gallinule. So if it looks familiar, that's why they're in the same family. Hey, Mum, I'm just watching the time, and
yes, we better race along, hadn't we?
Better race. We've got 3 more letters. I saw Inca dove. Inca doves are very cute. All their feathers have a little black border, which is sort of why they look in that illustration like they have kind of waves on their feathers. Another way to go Plirding is if you see a trash bin, a trash can, a garbage can out in the world, and stuff has not made it in, you can pick it up and put it in. That counts as plirding. Every little bit you do helps. Every piece of litter you take out of the environment helps. You don't have to have a huge garbage bag that you fill up every time you go outside. I mean, if you want to, that's fabulous, but you don't have to. Make plirding work for you, because then you're more likely to do it more, and doing it as much as you like is very, very helpful. Another thing that's worth mentioning, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but sometimes here in the US, when big events happen, the folks who are picking up litter, who are emptying the trash cans at like national parks and stuff, are not working, and the trash cans end up overflowing terribly. So please don't add to that problem by adding your trash to the overflowing trash can. That doesn't help. That counts as littering. And if you would like, you could pick up some of other people's trash and just take it with you to the next available place to dispose of it properly, instead of leaving it out there to blow around and get in the way.
Okay, our iBird is the Australian white ibis. It's called the farmer's friend in rural areas because flocks of ibis converge on locust plagues and gobble them up. So they're very valuable. But in the cities, they are scavengers, and they tend to scavenge in landfill sites or rubbish bins that are overflowing, or leftover picnic scraps. And so they're called tip turkeys or bin chickens. And you can see the featherless head. It makes it good for dipping your head into gooey, anyway, gooey things to feed on. And at Coburg Lake, they found the island quite to their liking to breed in the last few years, and the numbers have really built up, become such a problem that other water birds have departed the lake, and the Moreland Council is developing a management plan to try and reduce their numbers.
Another way to go plirding, to sort of focus and structure your plirding efforts, is to adopt a spot. In North America, there are lots of cities and counties and states where you can adopt a spot, adopt a trail, adopt a highway, where you and a group of friends maybe are responsible for picking up all the trash in that area. Of course, you don't need to formally adopt a spot to adopt it in your heart. And doing that, focusing your efforts on one place, if you go patch birding regularly to the same place or the same general area, it's really fun to see over time how your efforts are paying off. And if people, other people are regulars in that area too, they might see what you're doing and might get inspired to help as well. These are two white-breasted nuthatches. They're incredibly cute. They hop around upside down and backwards, like head first down tree trunks, picking up little bugs and stuff from the cracks between bark. And they're very gorgeous. They're also the Birdability logo, so I'm a little bit biased.
We have similar birds in Australia, the tree creepers and the satellas, but they live in the forests, so we don't get them along the Merri Creek. We haven't planted quite enough trees yet, one day perhaps, but we do have the very elegant Nankeen night heron. Here's one at Jones Park Wetland, again in East Brunswick. They are night herons. They're called night herons because they're mostly nocturnal. During the day, they roost in trees near water. They have two long white plumes when they're breeding. You can see one plume coming down from the head on this bird. They eat fish and other aquatic animals. So it's quite exciting to find a night heron along the creek or perhaps around Edwards Lake.
And in North America, there are black-crowned night herons and there are yellow-crowned night herons, and they have amazing plumes too, and they look really similar. If you're curious, Nankeen is referencing the colour. Apparently that is the colour, that rusty kind of reddish, buffy, brown kind of colour that this beautiful bird is sporting. And finally, like I mentioned, you don't have to have any special equipment, and you don't have to take huge amounts of trash out of the environment every time you go plirding. A little bit really helps. This guy is looking at a gyrfalcon or a gyrfalcon or a gyrfalcon, because no one knows how you say that name. It's this beautiful raptor that's way up far north. I haven't run into one yet. I haven't been in cold enough places at the right time of year. looks like a big snowshoe hare is about to meet its death. But this bloke has designated one or maybe both of those drink bottle pockets on the side of his backpack to put his trash in. So that way he can have his hands free for his hiking pole and his binoculars, but he can still be packing some trash out with him easily without carrying anything extra. So there's lots of creative ways you can go plirding. It doesn't have to be one particular way. So expand your brain and find a way that works for you, so that you want to do it. So
our final bird is for G is the golden whistler, which is one of my favourite birds. Beautiful, the male that is. The female is a simple grey, still very, very pleasant bird to see. They feed on insects and spiders and things in the mid to lower canopy, so you might see one if you're poking around looking for litter along the creek. Most often seen along the Merri Creek in the cooler months. They have a very musical whistle, which when you get to know it, you'll be able to tell that there's one in the neighbourhood as soon as you hear it. Might be quite a bit harder to find, even though they're so bright. If they turn their backs to you in the trees, you won't see it. And here's a great opportunity to give a shout out to the Merri Birds calendar, because if you have this year's Merri Birds calendar, you will have noticed this little friend on your calendar about 2 or 3 or 4, whatever day it is, ago, because it's a September bird. Yay! We have one of the Merri Creek bird calendars up here. I'm currently living in Alabama. It gives my husband great joy every month to discover which bird friend will be gracing our kitchen. And we had one last year when we were in Kentucky. So it's fun to travel with this great thing. So I believe the 2022 Merri Bird calendar will be on sale shortly. Is that right? Indeed. So 80 producing another calendar for next year, and more wonderful photos of Merri birds. They'll be available directly from 80 or through Friends of Merri Creek. So keep a lookout on the Friends of Merri Creek website. 80 might be able to tell us which month to look out when they'll be available for sale in the chat. You can tell us. So that's all from us about plirding. My email address is down there. I can also put that in the chat if you had any questions, but please check out our website about all these other plirding strategies that might be of interest to you. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Freya and Anne. I think we can all agree that was just fantastic, and I think it's just hopefully inspired a few of you to get out there when it's not raining, or even if it is raining, and get out there and really explore your local area, though I know a lot of us are already exploring those areas already, but it'd be great to even make them look a bit more attractive, and obviously reduce the amount of litter ending up in our creeks and then ending up in the ocean. So I do a lot of training people how to pick up litter safely, which doesn't take very long, but it's one of those things I think we've tried to be really careful about when we are going plirding or picking up litter with a group. There's some really simple steps that you can do. A lot of this information I'm going to share is actually on the Friends of Merri Creek website under litter collection. So I'll put that in the chat before we finish today as well, so you can have a look at that information as well. I've also got a Facebook page, Merri Creek Litter Cleanups, and I must say we're all talking about Merri Creek a lot today, but obviously this is relevant for any creeks, rivers around Victoria, Australia, the US, the world. So it's all pretty relevant for anywhere really. So good thing to do is pick a location first where you're going to go. So it might be your normal walk that you do. It might be something you can do in consultation with me. If it's on the Merri Creek or the Moonee Ponds Creek, I know both creeks very well, and I can certainly talk to you about areas that are actually quite safe to go. And there's certain areas that you shouldn't go. We don't encourage people to pick up litter in the water itself either, especially if we've just had a lot of rain. So if you see some areas where you can see a lot of litter and you're a bit concerned about it, but it's not safe for you to go and pick it up, you can actually talk to your local council and the local water board. In Melbourne, it's Melbourne Water that looks after our in-stream rivers. So you can talk to them about actually having some trained people to actually come and pick up the litter. Pick a date and time to go out, either if you're going out with your household or with one buddy at the moment in Melbourne, and always check the Victorian Government COVID page for what current restrictions are. Check the weather forecast and ensure the water level of the creek is not too high. You can see in this picture here on the left, that's the Merri Creek in flood. So, and of course, where we are living in a lot of cities, we've got a lot of concrete areas, a lot of hard surfaces. So even if it rains 10 millimetres, that can go into our creeks really, really quickly. So you've got to be careful that you're not going at times when the floodwaters are going to be up too high. So always check the weather before you go out. Read the safety information on the Friends of Merri Creek litter collection page. Take your gloves if you need, or a bag and a litter pickup stick to pick up your litter. And as I mentioned before, I've got plenty of them via click and collect at the moment. If you can, it's great to get to the site where you're going to be picking up litter and take a photo of what it looks like before you picked up the litter and even afterwards. And you can actually post them on Instagram, Friends of Merri Creek Instagram page, or I've got a page called Merri Creek Water Watch, or on the Facebook page Merri Creek Cleanups, and to show us it's really nice to share at the moment what people are doing out in different creeks. Hey, this is what the creek looked like, and now look what it looks like now. Taking the litter home, of course, and disposing of it, it's really important. Most councils will actually offer that service. You can actually contact them on their website. But at the moment, because in Melbourne in particular, because we're in lockdown, probably best to take it home with you. So it's really good that Freya mentioned, just taking one bag and filling that up. You might even perhaps pick an item that you're most concerned about. At the moment, for example, I'm noticing a lot of face masks. So that might be a good one to try and just pick those up in particular, because they've got a lot of plastic in them. So if it's too overwhelming to pick up everything, maybe just pick one item and take them home and start with that. The other thing I just wanted to mention while I've got you all, is that we're actually in Victoria, and I'm sure the US has something similar. I think it's called Literati. I know there's an app there, and there's probably a number of other apps that we collect information on our litter now, because obviously we don't want to be picking up litter forever. We want to actually see some change, but in order to see change, we need data. So what's really great, and I'll share my screen with this too to show you really quickly, is there's actually some great portals out there at the moment, and I'll just sort of move this across so you can see it there. This one's in Victoria. It's called Litter Watch Victoria. Anyone can join. You can register when you log in to actually upload what you found, and even if it's just one item, if you went out for an hour and picked up 20 face masks, it's a really good thing to put that on this website, or send it to me and I'll put it up. One of the great things that you don't have to log in or register is it's got a great mapping tool. So all you have to do is press mapping up the top there, and it's got the whole of Victoria, but I'm just going to focus on the Merri Creek today. And you can actually just go into litter data and pick surveyed. So where have people been surveying? And we'll go back to Melbourne, and you'll actually get to see all these red dots that I think that are slowly just coming up. So this shows where people have actually already been picking up litter. And you can see a lot of it, those wavy lines, is actually the Merri Creek. So there's been a lot of people really actively already picking up litter. So each of those dots you can actually click on, and you can actually see, well, what have people been finding? So this is just a summary. It'll just tell you how many pieces. So the litter's picked up by pieces. So even if it's a small, tiny piece of macro plastic, that's counted as one piece. So for example, the 2 surveys were done in this area, one in 2019 and one in 2020, and 3 people picked up 21 pieces. So they probably were quite large pieces, or maybe they just had one bag. Maybe they were focusing on one thing. Whereas down here, we had 90 people collecting over 1,000 pieces of litter. So it can really vary. Another great thing this website has is you might want to know, well, what's been collected over a longer period of time. So let's have a look. The Friends of Merri Creek have been collecting data for about 3 years now, and we haven't got all the information up here yet, but just when people are happy to pick it up, because I know for some people collecting data isn't the most exciting thing. So that can be something that I guess I'm really trying to encourage people to do, but I know it's not the most exciting thing, but it's really good when we can actually look at the data. So here we go. We've got Friends of Merri Creek at 4 sites. So there actually are a lot more sites that people are collecting litter, but these are the ones that we have the most data at the moment. If we only have one piece of information, it's not really a trend. So the data's not as useful. So we really want people to go back to the same sites again and again. So you can see here, Merri Creek, it's series. We've got 4 surveys that have been completed. I know there's a lot more people picking up litter, but they're not, if they don't give me the data, it's not here, so we can't always report on it. But you can see here there's 4 surveys here. The Merri Park wetlands next to Northcote High School, there's 5 surveys done. There's been a really active group along the St George's bike path, and they've got 21 surveys put in there. So that's the kind of thing we want. We want that amount of data, because then you can really get to see some patterns and what's happening in that area. So what's really interesting about this graph is you can see that there's definitely quite a bit of polystyrene in certain areas. Not next to so this is actually at the Rushall train station in the city of Yarra. You can see not much polystyrene there, but the aqua is plastic, and you can see most of them have quite a lot of plastic. Remember, this goes in numbers too, so it's the amount of pieces, not how heavy they were or anything like that. But you can see the main types of things that we're seeing is polystyrene, plastic, metal and glass. But overwhelmingly on the Merri Creek, as in probably lots of rivers and creeks around the world and in our oceans, about 70% of what we're picking up is actually plastic. And it's that soft plastic. So like from plastic bags breaking down, or food packaging, people using disposable cups and the lids, those are plastic bottles and the lids. Those are the types of things we're seeing a lot in our rivers and creeks. So it's really quite interesting to start seeing those trends. But I guess I'm really doing a bit of a call out for data. The more information we have, the more we can work out what the trends are to actually then make those changes, talk to the land managers, talk to enforcement if we have to issue fines, and look at other ways to actually reduce these things. Like what we've got with the balloons at the moment, that it's now illegal to release balloons because we had a lot of data on where the balloons were occurring and what damage they were making. So we need that information. But anyway, this is a really great, if you're into data, which you can tell I am, this is a really great website to explore where people are picking up litter. And there's some really, actually I was going to mention just really quickly, the Friends of Edwards Lake and Reservoir, or Reservoir, however you'd like to say it, have been collecting litter for quite a while, the last 2 years, and haven't got all their data in yet. They're still putting it in, but we're actually starting to see some really interesting trends in their data as well. So this is actually at the lake itself. Then we've got the car park of a hotel right next to the lake, and then we've actually got some from the wetlands. But you can see it's quite interesting. The Lake Hotel, which is a smaller area, the car park, has heaps more litter than we've found around the lake itself. And the lake itself, unfortunately, does have a lot of people that picnic. Nothing wrong picnicking, but unfortunately, a lot of people in that area picnic and then they just get up and they leave their litter there. So the Friends group are having to pick up quite a lot of that litter. But even so, even though there's a lot of litter in the park, there's actually a lot more in the car park. So we're still getting a lot of people going to a car park, eating takeaway food, and then just chucking their litter outside and leaving it. And the problem in that area in particular is it's right next to a creek, the Merri Creek, sorry, the Edgar's Creek, which flows into the Merri Creek. So we're getting a lot of litter there. So this can be really powerful, this tool, to have this information about what's occurring in a different area and seeing those patterns. But I will stop sharing there now because I see what time it is. It's time for us to nearly finish, and I'm sure there might be some questions or things that people might want to add.
Julia, the questions have been answered by everyone so actively.
Oh, cool.
Kind of functional through the chat, asking each other questions, and the group is so well informed and linked up to information that they've been answering and supplying each other all the way through. So it's just been really rich in the background there on chat. Every time I've gone to enter something, someone's jumped the gun. So thanks everyone for being such a, obviously a really active group of participants in this conversation. We call it a webinar, but really it's a wonderful conversation, and it's so amazing as well to be thinking about this local area, but connecting with American audience as well. Thank you, Freya.
No worries. And if it's all right, I see Ray in the audience, and this is totally on the spot. Ray didn't get any warning. Ray, Julia mentioned to me earlier that you might want to say a couple words about Talkin Birds and invite folks to listen.
Oh, thank you, Freya. Yes, I don't have anything prepared, but you know a lot about Talkin Birds as well. We've been doing our show for about 15 years. And it's all about birding. And over the last few years, and with a lot of help from Freya, too, we've become more of a conservation focused show. And one thing I might say about that is when we started kind of easing into doing more conservation themes within the show, we wondered, how people would respond to that and whether they would say, why don't you just talk about birds? But it's been really gratifying to see that that has not been the response. We get wonderful feedback from people about talking about conservation and things like Plirding and just picking up litter in general and being aware of plastic pollution, for example, in creeks and rivers and in our oceans. So we're kind of gratified to be able to keep that conservation focus going. And we're really hoping to connect with some bigger organizations as we go along to kind of advance the whole litter cleanup idea, and recognizing what a world scale problem it is, and trying to do our little part to help inform people and maybe inspire people to get involved, as you guys are doing in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, it is a worldwide phenomenon, litter, in particular plastics and litter, but it's so great to see so many people wanting to do something about it. So I think that definitely gives us hope. And even in the world at the moment, in a pandemic, there are still some things that we can all do, which I think is really important. I think I'd just like to say thank you to everyone. Did Anne and Freya want to say anything to finish off before we sign off?
Oh, I'd just like to thank everyone for tuning in, and hope to see you out on the creek looking at birds in the future when we're allowed to get together again. And picking up litter, of course.
Of course. Have to add that in.
I'm thinking on our bird survey routes that are in fact out there and back again, we could be aiming to pick up some litter on the way back when we're not looking at the birds so intensively.
And collect the data too, maybe. Or is that asking
indeed.
too much?
Indeed, we could try that too.
Can always try.
Yeah, and thanks Julia, and thanks everyone for coming in. I am an occupational therapist, which is a healthcare profession, so I never thought I would have a chance to present alongside my mum, because on the surface our careers do not align at all, but look at this. There you go. So that's just a really fun bonus to me. So thanks everyone for coming, and I hope to hear about and see about your Plirding adventures on social media.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Angela, for looking after the chat for us. And everyone, have a lovely evening if you're in the States, or have a lovely morning or afternoon if you're in Australia. Enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us.